Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Conversations with the Dean. We've got a wonderful guest today, Tammy Howell. What a beautiful name.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here, Tammy. Welcome to the Lipscomb campus.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Tammy is the president and co-founder, principal of W Squared, which is an unusual name for a company. But you were given one of the Entrepreneur of the Year awards, so obviously you've got a very successful company. Tell me what W Squared does.
We provide outsourced infrastructure for what started to be usually startup companies. We provide finance and accounting, HR payroll, and IT for companies that really want to focus on their core competencies. And the infrastructure is required and necessary and very important, but obviously can be a distraction for some companies. And so they can go out and sell and market and develop their products, and we take care of the back office.
Okay. Now that's a very big business around the world, and I think we've all read, or many people have read, the book that Tom Friedman wrote several years ago, The World is Flat. And he traveled to India and then on to China, and he was just amazed at what was going on around the world about providing services over the internet. So does your business compete with companies in China and other places in the world providing those services?
It does to some degree. What we're seeing overseas at this time is really that certain small segments are being outsourced. So a very discrete process such as accounts payable or payroll, where it's very transaction oriented, is being outsourced. We kind of run the breadth of an entire department, if you will, the accounting department or the payroll department. So we kind of do soup to nuts. You know, on the finance and accounting side, we may work on banking, and we may work on risk, and we may close the books. We may do a lot of things. But overseas, it tends to be, right now, a very siloed, transaction-based process.
Okay. And I think the industry is often referred to as the BPO industry. BPO as in business process outsourcing.
That's correct.
I think, would that describe your business?
That is the category we're in. We like to, and I know we've talked about this a little bit, but we like to say that we are a business process partner, because in our mind, the strategic initiatives are just as important as the actual processes. And so helping a company come to where do they want to be in 5 years, and then having the strategy and the vision to get them there is just as important as being able to be sure that all the payroll's done properly or that the books have been closed properly. So
your company, Tammy, is providing a much more important service to your clients than just temporary help, for example. You're there for the long term and are very integrated into the very fiber of the business.
Exactly. We like to say that we earn the right to be called we with our clients. In other words, when we talk about something that the client's doing and we say we have to earn that right, and it's a long-term partnership.
Okay.
We feel like we give them strategic expertise and systems and some of the other things that they might not be able to afford when they first get started. And as the company's grown, it turns out sometimes those are needed even after a company becomes, mid-sized. But we've really spent most of our careers doing that for individual companies, and that's kind of how we got started doing it for multiple companies.
Now, I came back from India just a few months ago. We're preparing to take our MBA students to India shortly, our MBA students. And while we were there, we went to Bangalore, and we visited a number of companies there that are in somewhat similar businesses as what you propose to be in. For example, we saw the company Emphasis. While we were there, we saw major facilities for Accenture and Capgemini. Are these companies that you compete with in what you do?
Somewhat. I think they do process outsourcing for very large clients. Okay. And so, they have individuals multiple people who do the same thing, and that's their entire play, is to do the same thing, lots and lots of transactions. We're a little different in that we do the transaction processing, but we also feel like that we have a great sense of what the company needs, and so maybe we're streamlining processes. It's not just something that's repeatable. Everything in a new company or a startup company is new.
Sure.
And so as you grow, you constantly have to refine. So it's a little bit different. When a company gets really large, those processes become very defined. And so it's easy to make them scalable and repeatable.
Sure.
But we think that kind of having the vision of, we know where you're going, and we want to be sure that you don't do something now that's going to prevent you from getting to where you plan to be.
One of the things that the Indian companies claim is that their labor costs are so much lower than the companies that they sell to in this country, and yet you're an American company selling to American companies, paying American wages. So how do you do that?
It's tough. I mean, they are correct. The wages over there are much lower, and they can do their educational system for the same money is about a third the cost for relative services as far as that goes. In our world, most of our clients they aren't of the size that they can use that sort of outsourcing and get the leverage from that pricing. So they're still paying American dollars for American salaries. We're competing more with the people they have working in-house than we are anybody overseas at this moment.
So how do you do that? By the time you add, obviously you have to add benefits, and I assume you add a profit margin, you have overhead.
Right.
So how are you able to save the company money?
Mostly because hires tend to come in stair steps. So you might not need a full-time AP person, but you have to hire a full-time because you can't buy a half a person.
Sure.
So we feel like we give the appropriate level of resources at the, for the company at the appropriate time. So as needs change, we can flex up or flex down, and we also have people, we feel like the expertise is there, so they may need a slice of a CFO. Maybe they only need that CFO for 15%. And because we are instituting process efficiencies, we can push things on down, whereas a company might have just hired a CFO and expected them to do lots of things. Doesn't always work out the way you intend.
Sure.
So,
well, I teach strategy, and so in the language of the strategy teachers, that allows the company, your client, to focus on their core competence, I guess, is the way you sell that service to your clients. Now, I noticed in your not only your bio, but your partners' bios, that there's a common thread in the healthcare industry. There seems to be a lot of experience in healthcare, and I assume that it's not accidental. And I assume that you must focus on the 300 healthcare companies that are based here. Is that the primary industry that you serve? It
is. I think Nashville's unique, as you know. Healthcare is a $30 billion a year industry for Nashville, and it's because of the entrepreneurship that developed around the healthcare industry back in the 80s. We were the fortunate beneficiaries of getting to work for some of those startup companies that went on to do very, very well and revolutionize some of the healthcare services that are provided. So we kind of grew up in Nashville, grew up in those startup companies, grew them to a fairly large size. Most of them that we worked with grew to about 200 million in revenue or larger. So we went from the card table with the PC on it to a 12 to 2,500 person company. And when you live through that, you learn a lot. You sometimes fail, you sometimes succeed, but hopefully you learn from everything that you do. So the healthcare industry, it was probably more geography than anything, but it's turned out to be a real niche, and there's no lack of companies that need what we do. And because we understand medical accounts receivable, and we understand medical billing, and we understand process flow for providers, all those things translate well into new companies that get started, because we can just kind of plug in that information, that brain trust for them when they might not have lived through that before.
Where do you find your employees? Do you grow your own employees, or do you have to hire people that have experience in that industry because of the specialized nature of it?
That's probably our biggest challenge, is finding qualified people. And obviously we love people who have clinical experience or who have done any sort of healthcare services company before. But mostly it's word of mouth and just networking with all the people that we have worked with in the past, and bringing them along. And I think at this point that's probably one of our real goals is to come up with a training program internally that would allow us to find people who might be interested in what we do and train groups and offer some kind of incentive to go through the training and, and hopefully pick the ones that feel like they're going to stay interested and want to pursue doing what we do.
Are you able to leverage technology so that people can work out of their homes and still service your clients, or do they still need to come into an office and work?
We spend a lot of time at our clients, so we do use technology. We're able to access our servers from wherever we are as long as we can hit an internet connection. So we don't really allow people to work from home. It's usually at the client or at the office because we do feel that the collaborative effort of being in the office together and just hearing what other people are doing is important, and fosters the team. It's also good for cross-training because, we may have 2 or 3 people sourced to a client, and maybe one of our employees has great knowledge. She's a certified coder for medical billing, and she may need to be pulled in for a client just for a specific purpose. So, that's one of the reasons that it's great to have everybody at least touch base at the office fairly frequently.
Now, I did a little investment banking in the healthcare industry, so I know just enough to be dangerous. But I happen to know that the coding business is a real challenge, and I also know that there's some proposals pending to greatly complicate coding to go from, I don't know,
ICD-9 to ICD-10.
And so that would take the number of codes from what to what?
It just changes the length of the code.
Oh, okay.
So exponentially, you've just increased your codes by whatever to the 10th power.
But significantly more complicated, and so the value placed on the skill is even greater. So does that create a challenge for you to have people qualified in that, and to maybe a different way to ask that question would be to say, what is health reform doing to your company? Well,
surprisingly, there's so many facets of it, but it has probably sparked a big. We have a division that really concentrates on all that is going on around electronic health records. There's so much going on around electronic health records, but mainly there is incentive now for providers to get to a point called meaningful use within the next year out to 2015. And there's benchmarks to be met, but there's also a financial component to it where they are incented financially to reach these benchmarks by a certain time period. Everybody's scrambling to get a new, some sort of electronic health record and to meet the criteria. The criteria is really complicated, so you almost need people who have expertise in the practice management systems and the health record systems. So we've been engaged to do that for a number of clients and have had success because we're not just healthcare consultants, we were actually healthcare providers, because in one of my previous companies where I worked, along with most of my partners, we ran on-site clinics for large employers. So we had a health clinic on the campus of Goodyear or U.S. Steel. So we employed the physicians and the nurses and the occupational therapists and all the other people that were needed, the pharmacists. So we understand the workflow, and the fact that we've done that has, before in our past, has come in it's been very appropriate for what's going on right now, because it's not just getting the health record up, it's making sure that it's usable by the people who need to see it, because everybody's end game is to get to appropriate and better patient care. I mean, you want better outcomes for your patients, so you don't want your doctor stuck in a place where they're documenting what they just saw in their visit, and it's taking longer than the visit took itself.
Sure. So the change that's taking place in healthcare with the reform legislation and so many other changes that are coming are actually to your benefit, because the more you can stay ahead of that, the more you save your clients time, I guess, and effort, money.
Right.
In terms of their having to cope with those changes.
Right, and I think it's also the choices are almost overwhelming, and so having a group sit down and say, we've looked at everything, we've vetted it, this is an enterprise level system, it has all of the data components you need if you want to do business intelligence reporting and sort of data warehousing, it has all of the templates for the add-ons for lab interfaces, and so just having somebody who says, hey, we've been there, we've done it, and we're going to do it for you too, I think is comforting. And IT is sort of a scary space for some people anyway, because there's, they may not understand it themselves, but they know they need it, but they don't really know what they need. So I think that our reputation of having done it before is very helpful for our clients.
I want to go back to the comment that I made early in the interview when I mentioned that you had won the Entrepreneur of the Year award, and congratulations on that. I think often our students who study entrepreneurship think that they have to invent a new cell phone or something with a high degree of technology, and they have to be maybe some famous person, you know, like that. But you've taken a very simple idea and you've met a fairly important need, but in a relatively simple way, and you've created a very successful business out of that. So tell me what your philosophy was that allowed you to be so successful in becoming the Entrepreneur of the Year.
Well, I think it was identifying the niche. We'd done it multiple times, so we knew what it required, and you know, just about the time you get the corporate office humming, suddenly you're sold and everybody has to start over again. And so that sort of plug in and plug out concept was very, we felt like it was would be appealing to people so that they didn't have to build it from scratch every time. And I think that probably the other thing was just, we all enjoyed working together. We had worked together in multiple iterations, and we liked working with each other. And so it was very sad when the company was sold, the last company was sold, and everybody sort of dispersed. It was like, darn, you know, I really like those people. And we knew we could do it. It took a little while for the adoption of the idea out there in the community, but we stayed with it. And I think that probably it was just, the industry had been established, it just wasn't established in the Southeast as strongly as anywhere else. And so we
And when did you found the company?
2005.
Okay, so you're 6 years old. Were the first couple of years pretty tough?
The first year was really tough. We went and talked to, we really thought that the venture capital firms and the investment bankers would think this was a great idea. And we talked to all of them, and they all said, great idea, let us know how it goes. Yeah. And then, you know,
been there, done that.
Been there, done. So after about 6 months, we actually found some small businesses in Nashville that we just happened to have relationships with, personal relationships, and we said, would you ever be interested? And actually there is a huge gap for companies between having a CPA to do their tax returns and maybe a bookkeeper, and they have to hire a payroll firm. And so we were giving them the opportunity to have all of that in one shop: IT services, finance, accounting, HR, payroll. We couldn't catch everything they were handing us as we were walking out the door from the first meeting. So we said, okay, we'll prove it on a small company or 2 or 3. And so we did the first couple, and really figured out what we wanted, like the monthly financial package to look like for that particular client, and figuring out, you know, how does a smaller company differ from the big companies we've been working on. So we sort of learned what was going to be the trajectory of our clients as opposed to being an employee of a company. And I guess a year in, we were very fortunate to have 2 people that we had worked with in our past come to us and say, I'm the interim CEO, I've gotten up here, it's a mess, I need help, you guys, this would be a great job for you, would you come and help me? And they needed it all. You know, it was a company that had just had infusion of capital done, and they had the money, but they didn't have any of the expertise, and they needed a quick implementation.
So you solved their problem.
So we solved their problem, and you know, they were both, fortunately, pretty high-profile people in Nashville, and it took off from there.
Did you ever raise outside capital?
We never did. We're 100% employee-owned at this point.
How did you finance it?
We were, because of our past, also the fortunate beneficiaries of having equity capital in the companies that we had worked for, and we saw what happened when you raised outside capital, and we just, 2 of the 3 principals are financial people. I'm one of them, and we aren't going to do anything that we we won't spend any money until we are sure we have the revenue to support it. So we were fiscally responsible, and at every point, you know, that we kind of hit an inflection point, we thought, maybe we want to raise some capital and really grow quickly or do this division or whatever. At the end of the day, we kind of looked at each other and said, you know, it's kind of nice to own our own thing and not answer to someone else right now.
So you and your partners own 100% of the business? We
own about, actually, on a fully diluted basis, about 75% of the business, and we have gifted through options and other incentives to all of our key managers and even some of our employees.
As incentives?
So the option pool has diluted us, but we're very happy. We are big believers in everybody being invested in the company.
But I assume those options have to reach a certain level of performance before they can be exercised,
right.
Is that right?
That's right, that's
so
right.
So you've got a win-win built in to that.
Right.
Well, what an inspiring story. And, you know, in this era when we pick up the paper daily and we read about the need to create jobs, you created jobs, didn't you? And you did it without a venture capital partner. You did it without a lot of complication. You just found a need and you met the need, and here you have a business.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the most rewarding part of the business, is that we've created jobs for 80 people at this point.
Really?
And as a business owner, you do feel responsible for all those 80 at certain times, but also, you know, you share in their joys and their successes, and we feel like they show up and do great work every day for our clients and for us, and you know, there's nothing I'll ask them to do that I won't do myself, and I know my partners feel that way too. And so our people are our greatest asset, for sure.
But 100,000 companies like yours would create a whole lot of jobs and would take a real dent out of the unemployment numbers.
Right, right. And it's a different bent, because if you work for one company, you go to work and you probably tend to do the same thing every day. Our employees come to work and they get to work on different clients. So, you know, an accountant might get to see a healthcare company, and maybe they saw an IT, you know, company, some sort of a special application that's being developed for the iPhone. I mean, whatever it is, our clients do a wide variety of things. We are probably about 70% healthcare, but healthcare IT has come a long way, and we have retail establishments and franchises, and so they get to see a lot, and they also get to see, because our startup companies especially tend to go through multiple rounds of funding, so accountants get to see all kinds of equity structures and all kinds of debt financing. So it's a great education for them as well.
And then they can take that knowledge and help another client who may be going through the same thing.
Exactly.
Because they saw it in another situation. Now, I happen to know that you're a mom.
I am.
And so you're not only a successful entrepreneur, a successful executive, a successful business person, but you're able to juggle the requirements of being a mom with being a successful executive and entrepreneur. And I just wonder, for our viewers, we may have some female students, I hope we do, who are watching this and may aspire to be Tammy Howell one of these days. What advice would you give our young female entrepreneurs?
Well, I won't say you can do it all of the time, but you can do it all over time. It is a balance. I think you have to pick who you work for pretty carefully. I've been very lucky to work for some great companies, and they've been willing to work with me, and I think that that's key. I think the other thing is just to have, if you don't have a family support, which I do, I'm lucky. I live in the same town I grew up in, so I have lots of family around, but I also have a great friend network. So if you happen to be living somewhere, have a network of people. And as far as your kids are concerned, mine are getting to the age where I never thought I would hear it, but my son actually told me this week, "Mom, you were right. You are the smartest person I know. I should have listened to you." So I'm seeing the payoffs of that they recognize that I've been working hard for them, and I've been trying to instill the same values in them that I think have brought me as far as I have come in my career, and they're starting to see the benefit. For a while, they weren't very happy. I mean, there are always times of the year when they used to say, "Gosh, Mom always sees the back of your head at the computer at night." But there is a a balance. You just have to strive to do it, and it may not be every single day, but hopefully by the end of the week, somewhere in the week, that 7 days, there's been a balance.
Well, I'm grinning because I've been there and I know exactly what you're talking about. And all you have to do is hear that one time, and it was all worthwhile.
Exactly.
And even if they later go back and recant what they said,
I'm sure that will happen next week.
at least you know they said it once, right?
I know. I was like, darn, I wish I should have recorded that. That would be really
Have
good to play over and over.
Write it down or chip it in stone or
Yeah,
something. That's
exactly
right. Well, that's such an inspiring story, not just to me personally, but I know to our viewers it will be too, because you are the very epitome of what the United States of America has to have, which is entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs who are ingenious and they find opportunity and they meet it despite family responsibilities and no capital and all the things that deter other people. You found a way to work your way around all that. So.
Well, and it's nice to be on this side of it. It's hard work, there's no doubt. When you own your own company, it's 24/7, but there's also the reward of that you are your own boss.
Sure.
And like I said, we couldn't have done it without all the great folks that work for us.
Now we're on such a high note. I don't want to turn the tables and talk about what you might do differently. But I just have to ask, as you look back on the experience, Tammy, what would you do differently from having had the experiences you've had now?
Wow, I don't know that I would have done a lot differently. I might have started when I was a bit younger, but I probably wasn't brave enough to do that. I don't know that I would have done anything differently at this point. I may change my mind.
Yeah.
But we've had our mistakes. I mean, everybody does. But I can't think of one that was critical to how where the business is now.
I think that came from your financial background, where you measured risk and took risk-averse steps.
Right. I think if anything, we probably have maybe been too conservative in some of the decisions we've made. And maybe we should have taken venture capital and gone into 40 cities and done this. But I also think that we've got the model built, and so I think it will be easy to expand. And at this point, we haven't even really had a sales effort. We mostly just take referral calls.
Really?
As my partner, our CEO, Shannon Farrington, says, she likes to say, we haven't made an outbound sales call. And,
what a remarkable story.
Yeah.
Well, tell me what does lie ahead. Are you planning to expand into other cities, or do you plan to sell the business and cash out, or what lies ahead?
I think that we'd like to explore the international opportunities. I think that we'd like to expand into some other cities. There's probably 3 or 4 other centers of excellence, if you will, for healthcare, and I think the healthcare vertical, we've proven we really do have a special qualification for that, and there's a fair amount of healthcare going on outside of Nashville. It's just Nashville's been easy to do, and so it's probably time for us to do somewhere else next.
Well, congratulations on the success of W Squared.
Well, thank you.
And I guess I should ask before we conclude the interview, tell me what W Squared stands for. How in the world did you come up with that name?
Well, actually, my partner, who I've been talking one of my partners is my sister.
Oh,
and so
okay.
My sister and I, our maiden name is Walcott.
Oh,
and so the name
okay.
of the company is Walcott Squared. And
So there are 2 of you.
there are 2 of us, and our third partner is actually my brother-in-law. So it's
family affair.
It is a family affair, but I can honestly tell you we do not run it like a family business. So.
It's all objective when you come in the office.
It's all objective. That's right. We had worked together before in other companies,
Sure.
so we knew we could do it. And I think that's what's made it easier. It is probably a little uncomfortable for some people when they find out, but then after they've worked with us for a little while, it's like they forget.
So after you spend all day, every day in the office, do you have Thanksgiving dinner together?
We do. We do.
Really?
We get along really, really well. I think we complement each other very well, and we do have a no work rule on off times, nights, weekends. We say, we invoke the no work rule. We can't talk about work. Every now and then somebody will say, I need to make an exception real quick. I need to ask you one question. But I think we've managed to stay friends, we've managed to stay family, and I think we've done a good job at growing a business and providing a service for our clients.
What a great story. Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
You're a great inspiration. We need 1 million of you.
Well, man, that's a very nice compliment. Not sure the world could handle 1 million of me, but thank you.
Well,
that's very
thanks
nice.
for coming to Lipscomb, too.
Well,
We're honored to have you here today.
Yeah.
And it's been an honor to have Tammy Howell as our guest today on Conversations with the Dean. We'll look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks for being with us.